Right, joining me now is George Weidman, better known by millions of fans on YouTube as Super Bunnyhop. George,
millions.
Let's say millions, hundreds of thousands at least.
Someday, maybe millions. Someday.
A day very close in the future. Well, George is kind enough to jump on and join us from Cologne, Germany, where he is at Gamescom, and he has had a chance for the last 2-3 days now of walking around the floor and seeing all of the greatness that is happening over there.
I am calling from a stand-up office desk in some cheap, crappy student housing in, like, the poor immigrant neighborhood of Cologne, so that I can bring you this live everyday news report of Gamescom. Lost my bags through United Airlines. I got lost in the woods in the mountains for a day on the way over here. Whoa, I tell you.
Good Lord, we're lucky to have you on here in one piece.
Yeah, and not only am I here in one piece, but I also did play video games for like a few hours once I was here. But I now have an outlet for writing stories about things that might not have everything to do with gaming through my Patreon, and I can't wait to make money writing stuff about the shit I just went through.
Is this your first time at Gamescom?
Yes, it is. I've had fans begging me for years to show up, but I've never really had a good excuse to until United Airlines put some tickets on sale for stupidly cheap back in February that happened to correlate with when Gamescom was happening. So I took that opportunity and had a lot to gain from it. I've been loving this trip.
What have you seen so far? What sticks out for you?
As far as Gamescom itself goes, I really had quite a pleasant surprise with Hat in Time. Wolfenstein II seems solid. I got to play some Skyrim VR, which was a complete shit show. But I guess we can walk our way through those as the podcast goes on.
Sure, absolutely. Gamescom so I was at E3 a little bit earlier this year. I'm not sure if you was at that as well. But Gamescom differs a little bit because it's more of a consumer convention as opposed to, announcing hardware. This is more of the software. And it's a lot more gameplay footage. It's a lot more hands-on with games as we're getting a little bit closer to launch with it.
Yeah.
So that's exciting, I imagine, to get your hands on games a little bit before they come out. And there's been quite a few big ones. You mentioned a few already. One I'm particularly interested in is Wolfenstein, which has a lot of buzz around it.
Yeah, that was the one I was definitely looking forward to playing as well. However, now that I've actually playing it, it was the kind of situation where I don't exactly know what I was expecting, and what I was expecting was more of the same, and since that's what it was just kind of meeting my expectations instead of really exceeding anything and surprising me in any special ways. What is interesting, though, is that they're still maintaining their same quality of writing and character delivery and voice acting direction that they were hitting such a great stride with during that first game. Well, first game, quote-unquote, the first Wolfenstein, The New Order. And in the second one, they seem to be addressing a lot of issues that I personally had with the gameplay, but the story more or less kind of was the star of the show in the last game, and that's hard to judge from I got to play for about 2 hours, but I think they intended people to play for an hour and a half through this demo. And the two levels they have you go through are anachronistically not connected to one another. A huge spoiler happens in the two levels they showed for the demo at an event, so I'm wondering if they really intended that to be the case or not. But there's some fun scenes, some fun and scary scenes that are about as fun and scary as they were in the first game, except this time they're probably more enjoyably scary for Americans because the Nazis have taken over America, which is an uncomfortable thought considering recent events, and uncomfortable seeing in the game how quite easily many Americans totally humbly welcome their new Nazi overlords.
This game seems to be coming out at it's horrible to say this, but at like the right possible time. Given
either the best or the worst, depending on what public perception has to say of it. One could argue that America is most in need of a piece of black comedy campy fun showing everyone how ridiculous Nazi ideology is. On the other hand, if they get it wrong, it's going to be extra extra hurtful on them in this case.
Right.
This could either be this is definitely going to be a scandal game, but whether or not it's the good or the bad kind of the scandal, I'm still holding my breath for. Can I go into detail?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Level 2 of this Wolfenstein II Gamescom public demo involves BJ Blazkowicz sneaking into a town outside of a military base in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere in Texas. Like, basically trying to set us in the town you see at the side of Route 66 in an old movie. Pure Western, Mideastern, Americana modernity. And you walk your way through what is basically City 17 pasted on top of Norman Rockwell poster Americana. Yeah. There's a robot scanner that photographs you and then pans away from the character. The literal Nazi police are not necessarily beating people up in the street, but kind of standing off to the side of the street, maybe paddling their bats in their fists. So you walk down, and literally no more than 10 seconds in, are Klansmen in full bedsheet ghost attire, just walking down the street, minding their own business. And like the normalcy that the game portrays that is really weird, and what I don't know if the Swedish people who are making the game have so much of a detailed knowledge on in comparison to the European history you parody blast your way through in the first game. Mm-hmm. So there's Nazi Klansmen walking down the street in full attire, and there's these hot-ass uniforms in the hot-ass sun, right? And they get stopped by Nazi policemen who quizzes them on how well they're doing in their German classes. And you hear this, like, redneck white trash voice shout, "Danke, sir." And of course the Nazi hates it, like slaps his bat on the asphalt and shouts, "No, it's Danke," or however the correct actual German pronunciation is. And I was like, wow, why do I feel bad for the Klansmen? I don't exactly know in this situation why they're like trying to frame the one horribly racist genocidal party that actually got government power versus the one that didn't, as if there's a greater of the two. I don't want there to be a greater of the two evils between those two, you know?
You should never have to choose between Klansmen and Nazis, I feel like.
But the situation they set up had me maybe unintentionally and uncomfortably feeling remorse for the Klansmen who were also getting oppressed by the Nazis. And that's why I think it could be the bad kind of scandal, is a lot of people seeing the game maybe not demonize even the racist Nazi Americans as harshly as it could, given modern contexts that maybe the developers couldn't foresee 6 months to a year ago, but right, given the timing of the game's launch, is going to be really uncomfortable.
Well, we'll see where America is at that point in time when the game is released. But it is as you say, it's a funny thing it doesn't shy away from any of this controversy. It seems like it throws you right into the middle of it.
It really doesn't, and the first game didn't either. Like, I don't know if I already asked if I could curse. I guess I'm allowed to mention the Holocaust at this point. The first game has an actual, real concentration camp level, and it's like, whoa! Like, I've actually, since arriving here, have talked to a lot of German fans of mine who enjoyed the first Wolfenstein game and appreciate it for what it does, but actually couldn't finish playing through that chapter. And now I'm thinking, with the stuff the Nazis are up to in America, they're up to no good and occupying people and quizzing them on their German in the streets, but they've also re-implemented slavery, which is something that I really don't want to have to dwell on in a fun shoot 'em up video game, but doing that creates camp. It might end up being a good outlet for it if it's enough of a campy social commentary, like many games have been in the past.
Right. Just as a consumer, having gotten your hands on it, does it feel like something that you would be interested in, or is it a little bit too hot for the moment?
No, I think it's something I'd be interested in. And if anything, I'm actually not necessarily worried about the topics that they're picking being hot for the moment. But I worry if the characterization is going to still remain hot during the moment. I don't know how much of the first game you've played, but it seems like in the introduction levels of the second game, they expect you to know a lot of the characters from the first game. Mm-hmm. They expect you to keep in mind a lot of the really weird, surreal, magical plot tricks that the first game took halfway through. There's a lot of the first game's maybe more unflattering final moments that are going to get picked up in right in the very beginning. There's characters and jargon getting tossed around that doesn't seem set up well, or like it'll hit as hard the second time as it did the first.
Gotcha.
Unless they just try to shock people, which they can do, which definitely worked. I was shocked, and might work out well for them. But I feel that the first Wolfenstein game was so close to being bad. It very narrowly avoided it through absolutely excellent presentation and writing and voice acting and music, but the level design and the gameplay in many ways represent a regression of the FPS genre, whereas a lot of other action games seem to be embracing more systems-driven than story-driven premises that are turning out to be quite fun and popular.
Well, it remains to be seen, and it is a very fine line, so we'll see when it comes out. We can change tacks a little bit and maybe talk about some of the other games you got your hands on. Anything in particular that you feel like stuck out? What's been your highlight so far of the games that you've actually been able to touch and play?
A Hat in Time was totally the highlight. That was the one that surprised, that exceeded the expectations, that was not exactly what I expected it to be, but was still honestly better than what I expected it to be. Given the game's incredibly long development cycle, I was easy to expect it to have been languishing in some development hell. Instead, what ends up being on the show right now is an extremely polished product. Given the recent flop of Yooka-Laylee to make a sales or critical splash of reviving old 90s platform collect-em-ups, mm-hmm. I was expecting A Hat in Time to represent many of the parts of that nostalgia genre people don't want to remember, which is what Yooka-Laylee might have made a mistake for. Unlike Yooka-Laylee, the game was super easy to control. There weren't any weird camera issues going on. The presentation is absolutely adorable. I laughed out loud many times. Level they're demoing at Gamescom that I played was Murder on the Owl Express, which got me excited because they made a very, very well-done trailer highlighting this level earlier. The whole level is an homage to the level of the Milkman conspiracy from Psychonauts. And it's an amazing coincidence that I was actually writing about Psychonauts in an article literally days before playing the Psychonauts tribute level. But for people who know that gag, that reference, that was a lot of fun to enjoy. No worries.
Sorry about that.
The premise is that you are on a train where a murder has occurred. You got to track down whodunit, right?
Right.
They have you collectathon your way through each room, finding clues, but you're not really finding clues through looking at an environment of cluttered objects and picking stuff up so much as you're finding clues by actually doing fun puzzle platform levels. The clues are more or less the collectible rotating in the air at the end of the series of obstacles you jump over, and maybe wallpapering the textures surrounding the cube room around your clue is like a fun texture gag, making a joke about the murder. There's tons of great dialogue, great voice acting. The visual presentation is a lot slicker than in previous years that they've shown. Mm-hmm. The game is absolutely smooth to look at. Everything looks like it has its place, like it has weight. I saw nothing wrong with the animations. No one's clothes were clipping through their other clothes.
Well, we are getting close to the release of this game because Hat in Time is due to be released on October 5th, I believe. So we're only a little ways out. So it's good that they are showing a product that's pretty close to being done.
It's going to be the end of an era when this thing launches. Like, I think this game's development cycle was longer than a presidential term. This was one of the first Kickstarter success stories, and now they're finally getting around to actually seeing it through, and hopefully they see it through. I have nothing to complain about the demo I played today, except I don't know, really weird nitpicks, like not enough of a process of logic to solving this mystery. But I think that's not the point. I think when playing the game in full, the context is going to show that it's more about platforming than the story, but it's going to do a cute-ass job either way.
It seems that platformers are kind of back right now, especially with nostalgia. We're seeing Sonic Mania did so well. Crash Bandicoot's been on the top of the charts for the UK charts for 2 months now, or something insane like that. Do you feel like this is a good time for A Hat in Time to... so many time references. But does it feel like a good time for A Hat in Time to come out?
I think so. People who were kids when late 90s N64 collectathon platformers were growing up are now... I mean, this naturally happens, right? Every 30 years, they pick a new decade of nostalgia to mine in the pop culture, and now we're mining late 90s kids. So it nicely correlates with, I guess, those late 90s kids growing up, maybe not having a lot of money to throw around, but at least enough on video games to exploit us.
That's the key. Another platformer that a lot of people are excited about is the new Super Mario Odyssey, and they announced a new level, or introduced a new level, I guess is a better way to phrase that, at Gamescom. Have you had a chance to play Super Mario Odyssey at all, or seen anything from Nintendo?
Unfortunately, I have not. I did not bother booking appointments with Nintendo, because I probably... I might have a case of imposter syndrome and think I'm not a big enough deal to do that, but I filled up my schedule even before thinking about it with a whole lot of other games I was interested in. I had a friend play it, though, and they had no complaints. They loved it.
Yay!
Yeah, they asked me, so George, what is your favorite Mario platformer that is 3D? And I answered Mario 64. The explanation he gave me was that it feels like a combination of all the good parts of Mario 64 with Mario Sunshine. You've got intriguing open levels that are vertically oriented with a lot of bounceables, but also in a big city that feels sandboxy, which makes sense because he played the new Donk City level, and oh my god, that's such a beautifully stupid name. Honestly, like, who doesn't both complain and love New Donk City at the same time? It
sounds like a Wesley Snipes movie from like 1998.
New Donk City, that yeah, starring like Tim Allen.
Of the big studios that are or the big gaming companies that are there, between Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, has any of those three distanced themselves? Or are they still kind of neck and neck at this point? I feel like at E3, Nintendo kind of stole the show, and I'm not sure if that's the same over at Gamescom.
And I don't really know if I've been paying that much close attention to them either. I've been spending a lot of time with more mid-range, mid-budget projects like The Hat in Time and the Wolfenstein than I have at really that I have at the press conferences of the big three console gaming manufacturers whose shows typically anger me. Anyways, that's a whole other topic. There's a huge ass chunk of hall number 7 that is basically blue because it's all lit up by Sony booths. And I did get to play actually a bit of Skyrim VR at the Sony booth.
But you said that wasn't great, correct? What did you think of Skyrim VR?
Oh, sorry. I think my crappy student internet Wi-Fi in this crappy student apartment cut you out there. Can you repeat that?
No problem. What do you think of Skyrim VR? I think I remember you saying
it's
at the
beginning. Mess.
Yeah, is it?
It's oh god, they accidentally might have made a pile of garbage. My jaw actually dropped. So okay. Where to even start? Let's start. They have the settings all completely down to the lowest possible to get the game running okay. And it's a shame because Skyrim is a very beautiful, very immersive game. Not just world, but game. There's so many good things to look at wherever you pull your camera angle in Skyrim that seeing an extremely suboptimal version of what you know could be there in front of your face is inherently disappointing, for me at least. Maybe you shouldn't be, but don't be George. Secondly, you teleport. You teleport using your right PlayStation Move wand, which is what they call those. You point at the ground, press a button on a controller you can't see that's covered in the wrong button you might accidentally press instead to instantly teleport towards a maybe 8-foot radius in front of you. Let's say 6 foot, 6.5. You can instantly teleport into a 6.5 radius wherever you wave your right wand, which is not necessarily game breaking, but it's definitely game exploiting. There were archers who were firing at me, and I was like Goku from Dragon Ball Z, just like zipping in and out of existence, teleporting to the other side of the frame every single time the arrow was supposed to actually hit my body.
What a bizarre thing to include in a Skyrim game. Why in the world?
I guess it's a new form of Dragon Shout. This is your new power. Your guy shouts the Draglish word for teleport, and they just turn into Dragon Ball Z characters zipping in short intervals, but at basic teleportation speeds. So it's completely unimmersive and doesn't fit the theme and doesn't look appropriate and doesn't make sense gameplay-wise. It doesn't make sense visually-wise, and I hate it. I've never been a fan of teleporting. Oh my god. Anyways. So I understand that it's kind of a necessary evil for a lot of VR developers who want to prevent motion sickness, but for whatever, I've never been opposed to the idea of just having options for teleporting in addition to traditional locomotion. But for the purposes of this demo at Gamescom, they used a method of locomotion in VR that I absolutely loathe and despise and hope is not the hole we go down. They also have you waggling your sword for melee combat, which is like another joke of an image I was looking at. You waggle your sword kind of 3 feet in front of you at arm's length distance. The PSVR is capable of tracking that. So you have an unlimited flamethrower in your other hand. You just kind of like point your fingers at the bad guy, press a button, that shoots a flamethrower in their direction. You wave your sword with your other arm so that if they make it through the flamethrower, they just kind of walk into your waggle point. You know, the waggle point. It's the tip of the sword waggling throughout the air. And
yeah, it's standard sword fighting.
It's still Skyrim. They don't have great AI, and they don't know that you're playing with VR controls, so they didn't change the AI at all to compensate for this incredibly drastic change in control scheme for the combat. Now, in order to make all of this work in a show setting for Gamescom, they give you unlimited health, unlimited mana. I think they disabled the inventory screen button on the controller, and also had a guy tap me on the shoulder and say, "There's no need to loot. Don't loot. It only takes time." Every time I stopped to like look at the contents of a shelf and smell the roses of a very immersive game that I was very immersively trying to immerse myself into. So on top of not really being that great of a transition to VR, they did a terrible job setting up a demo station to get people in the mood, which I guess makes sense given the concessions that they're making. But at that point, I'm wondering why even bother demoing Skyrim VR at all.
Yeah, it sounds like it doesn't even really feel like Skyrim at that point, because half of the game, for me at least, is going around and exploring the world and looting. So.
Yeah, walking around a snowstorm at night in Skyrim with no music on is peaceful, relaxing, meditative. On the other hand, teleporting in like 3-foot intervals with your screen like either snapping to black or snapping to an instant new view through a snowstorm at night with no music is not gonna, as close as it would be to enhancing that experience, I really don't think it is.
Yeah, it seems like they kind of missed out on capturing the essence of what Skyrim is, but c'est la vie.
It's only because of the teleporter. Like, I swear, the teleporter is something that I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know if I'm allowed to live in a world where this is becoming normal.
We set an awful precedent.
Some games have figured it out.
Yeah, well...
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, it can work for certain games, but if it fundamentally changes the concept of what you're playing, then...
Go play Farpoint, play RE7. They work fine in VR, and as long as there's some effort put forth to make it work without motion sickness, it can be done. And it kind of has to do with the player's posture, the controller, the speed of the character moving, and the stuff that you're seeing in front of your face in the headset. But it can be done.
Right.
And I feel like they could have really gone the extra mile with Skyrim VR that they did not. This is very disappointing to me, but again, it remains to be seen. I've never really been a fan of previews, so what am I doing here?
Oh no, this is a terrible question then, because we're right about in the middle of Gamescom right now. So you still have a couple more days there. What are you looking forward to that you haven't gotten your hands on yet?
Stuff that's going to take really long lines, like Nintendo and Microsoft and Sony stuff. I want to go back to the Sony VR booth and play a game that the guy who gave me the Skyrim demo recommended I play instead. Something called Bravo Team, I think. Mm-hmm. The poster art they had just looked like some utterly generic policeman tactical cop shooter game. But the thing is that when I stepped out of the Skyrim demo, the guy looked at me and grimaced and was like, "Oh, what did you think?" And I kind of looked back and grimaced and was like, "I don't know." And then he tapped me on the shoulder and was just kind of shook his head, was like, "Yeah, I know. You should play that one next time instead." So that's coming from a voice I trust at this point. Someone who suffered through that with me is someone who probably knows which VR demo and the place they're working in that week is the good one. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. I might give Super Mario Odyssey a try, but that's the sort of case where it's such a done deal that it's probably for sure going to be fine no matter what, that I don't exactly feel like I would have much to report to the world if I spent 2 to 3 hours waiting in line for 30 minutes of that. Let's see. There's The Evil Within 2, which I'm interested in waiting in line for. That might be different from the first game, might not. I don't know. The first game was another case of something coming so awfully close to being bad, except in this case it actually might have sunk below that level, which only means that it was just so close to being good. And I'm wondering if they make the second game more survival or oriented, more kind of inventory systems driven, less linear, or less fast-paced and loud, because that's not how they marketed the first game, but they realized a lot of people wanted that experience in the process. Meanwhile, indies have been killing it with the kind of horror AAA can't make and desperately needs to capitalize on, as seen with the success of RE7.
Attention, everyone. Well, it sounds like you get your work cut out for you for the next couple days, and there's still quite a bit to see. I hope you're wearing comfortable shoes and you're stretching it out.
Yeah. Oh my god, I'm so happy I'm wearing comfortable shoes. But it can't be that bad from here on out. I mean, even though I lost my bags, one of the first things I did to make the horror of being in a foreign country with only 2 pairs of clothes was go to a grocery store and buy 4 jugs of Nutella.
When in Germany.
I'm bringing this stuff home. I'm definitely keeping some of it for myself, but it's so much better than the stuff we get in the States. The Nutella in America is watered down to meet federal regulations for how chocolate has to all taste the same. Nutella in Europe, on the other hand, woo!
You're getting it straight from the source.
Is the real deal.
It blows your hair back.
It really did. The waiter was actually laughing at me. I had a bite of Nutella and kind of had to shake a bit in the seat. And I asked him, "Wait, is this just regular Nutella from the store?" And he was like, he laughed and said, "Yeah?" Question mark.
All right. Well, thank you very much, George, for coming on. I really appreciate the time that you've given us, and best of luck with the rest of your excursion.
Oh, I'm going to need it.
I bet. Stay safe.
I did my hiking day in the mountains without any fresh clothes to change into when I was done. It was a nightmare.
Oh, God.
I even live.
Well, at least you have your bags now.
I have my bags.